Howdy, folks. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Alex, can we hear you?
You guys hear me at all? Is this thing on?
I'm not hearing you. I don't know anybody that's here in the room. We were just trying to get this set up, but for whatever reason,
Check this out. They can.
you can hear us both.
Oh my God, this is great.
Awesome.
So it's
It's
you.
me.
It's Jason.
Okay. So it's me. Sweet. So I can't hear Alex, which that's a problem, I think. You know what? Hold on a second. I'm gonna quickly load up Chrome and see if that's the issue.
All right.
I tried to save on Chrome. Check debug log. Okay. I apologize, people, folks. Yeah, I've used the computer once or twice.
Hmm.
Let me see something here. Um, I like to use Safari on these things because it works better. So normally, anyways. But first of all, I want to thank everybody for showing up and registering. I'm super excited for this. I mean, I know Alex has spent a boatload of time, building businesses, coaching people, and his time is valuable. So I'm super excited that he accepted my invitation to selfishly make him available to you guys. So I'm super excited to have Alex here and you guys here. I mean, you know that um, as my Chrome browser is loading up, I'm just kind of doing a little bit of an intro here, but presumably you know who I am, Jason Resnick. I'm the founder of Nurture Kit, which we'll get in here in a little bit, but I help established online businesses really get more customers and build repeat customers and create raving fans. But I also help developers and designers try through coaching to try to build predictable income and specialize their business as well. Um, Today, I'm essentially your MC. So I'm here to kind of, if really I can't hear Alex, but if I'm here to basically feed the questions that you guys have. I have a couple of questions, but before we dive into that, Alex, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, this is kind of funny because I can pretend to be saying stuff and Jason wouldn't know. So I could be like, Jason is amazing. Jason sucks, and he wouldn't know the difference because he probably can't read lips. So my introduction is some of you folks might have heard of WP Curve. We were a 24/7 WordPress support service that was founded in 2013. We were acquired by GoDaddy in 2016, and then I took the business over there and scaled it and grew it and really made it something significant and big. And so I got the chance to work with Jason through my Build Your Product program. The thing that I really enjoyed about having him in there is he was very diligent and did all of his homework. And that's what I look for in folks that typically succeed. They just get through and do the reps and do what's required to put their business out there. But I know that in Jason's email, he said he's had good success with what he's offered, his new Nurture Kit offer. So I'm really excited to see him progress. And yeah, one of the things that I'm excited about is if there's other folks that are looking to build a scalable product or a scalable service. I've been coaching for the last 2 years. I'm going to be hanging up the headset in June, at the end of June. So I'm running one more program, which is the Build Your Product program, which we'll get into in a little bit. Now, Jason's disappeared, so I guess that makes me MC for the moment. I'll see if he's chatting to me on Slack. He's here. Can you hear me, Jason? Hear me now. Well, while I'm waiting for him to appear back on my screen. Oh, great. Okay, this is good news. Jason, did you have any questions to start with? Is it just going to be me on the screen, maybe? I don't know.
Lou.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Finally.
Eureka!
Jeez. So I apologize for all of that technical difficulties. Computering is hard. So yes, Beth says this makes me feel way better about my last live webinar. Yes, sometimes these things happen. But thank you for your patience, Alex. I did hear the end of the intro. Yes, I do suck. It is what it is, right? So, nonetheless, we are here. But yes, I want to be mindful of everyone's time, especially Alex's and everyone that came here. Look, real quick, housekeeping. There's an ask a question button. Some of you already found it. Drop your question in there. That's where I'm going to kind of just look and pull the questions from, because the chat sometimes gets a little hectic and can't really see it sometimes. But also in there, you can see other people's questions. You can upvote. So what I'm going to really do is just kind of browse through those questions and take the top one and kind of go on. If it's the same score, it's just in the order which it's received. And so Alex also shared a little bit about what his coaching program is. There's a button down below. You can click that and apply to the program. If any of this is interesting to you, you know who I am and kind of what I'm about. And usually I'm not the type to pitch things, take 20 minutes of your time with slides and stacks and all the rest of it to pitch anything. But how I pitch things is really just sharing my experience, my stories, and I know Alex said a little bit about what I did, but I just back in February of 2019, Alex and I hopped on a call where he was actually in France at the time, and he gave me some time to allow me to ask some questions that I had around my business and thinking about productization and things of that nature. And so he shared some thoughts and feedback with me and challenged me a bit too. And that's what I liked. And so he was actually gracious enough to give me some legit coaching at that time. And so it was a few months later where he invited me into the course, in the program rather. And there's a small group, stellar people that are in there, really focused on building a business for their lives, really. To be able to accomplish the things that they want in their own lives. And so I the end of last year went through the program, and it was a small group, but we held each other accountable. Alex was there to support us, encourage us, challenge us, ask us difficult questions, make us feel a little bit uncomfortable about certain things, but all for the good. And that's why I wanted to share this with you guys too. So, just in the 5 years that I was looking to productize my business, essentially in 3 short months, I got a sales page up. I was able to have a somewhat formalized pitch, and really was able to now, and I looked at this today, my monthly revenue is actually within 15% of my custom services revenue. So I've really shifted the focus from my custom services towards Nurture Kit at this point in time. So I know that this program, the results are in the data for me. It always is. And so that's really what it's about. And so I wanted to selfishly bring Alex in front of you guys to be able to ask some questions, but also if any of this, and that's the pitch, right? So my pitch is that, my story there. So if any of this resonates with you, click that button below, go apply, get into this final program that he's running at this point in time. And it's not for the lack of results. So, I said it in the email, like he had this grin on his face, like I caught his hand in the cookie jar there. So he's probably got something else cooking. So you want to capitalize on this opportunity while you still can. So with that being said, shall we dive into the questions?
Let's do it, man. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your story too. I still remember that conversation. And you were giving me all the backstory about the business that you had and then like making that transition. And I can still remember some of the points we were talking about. So I'm so happy to see you like take big steps to get to where you want it to be versus just kind of spinning around, which is something that I sometimes see with folks that have been running the same business, dealing with the same problems, having the same headaches. So I acknowledge you for that. I honor that. I think that's huge. So well done, man. Congrats.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Awesome. So why don't we jump into the questions here? Again, anybody, if you have a question that comes up, you think of things, use that ask a question button. That's where I'm going to be pulling everything from. So first question is from Preston. He asks, who should a new productizer plan hire first? More service providers like designers and developers, writers, things of that nature, while the entrepreneur focuses on the biz dev and processes, or admin folks, operations, marketing, biz dev, while the entrepreneur focuses in on maintaining the quality of service.
My preference for this, and this really helps if you want to scale, is that you don't do any fulfillment yourself. So you do as little fulfillment of service as you possibly can. And the reason that I suggest that is because there's something that I call the curse of competence. When you're really good at doing an activity, whether it's like web development or writing or marketing or whatever else it is, you'll find yourself heads down on doing that work and fulfilling versus actually figuring out how to grow the business and build a team. And so there's a balance to this, right? So with WP Curve, we specialized in WordPress support. I am horrific when it comes to using the WordPress backend. I break stuff. I'm sure I've deleted things that I shouldn't have. It's probably better to keep me out of there. And that was by design. Like the co-founder that I had experience in web design, which was like useful, but the team that was always doing the work were the folks that we hired and brought in. And so when GoDaddy was looking at acquiring the business, one of the things they're looking for is you've got this team, you've got this system, you've got this process. How can that scale? And what does your business today look like at 10x the size? If you make yourself an integral part of that, and you're like the person that's, juggling or like spinning all the plates or juggling all the balls or doing all of the things all at once, you create a brittle business. And if you get sick, then you're in big trouble. This happens all the time. I see it in productized services. I see it in newsletter-based businesses, other online businesses where folks become basically the anchor point of what's being created or developed. And that is really brittle. So my recommendation there is if you have a choice between ops, like delivery, fulfillment, that kind of stuff, or admin and stuff that's around the business, I will take ops 9 times out of 10 for a first-time productizer. And the other thing is when you're marketing a business in the early days, there's so much rejection that it's really hard for someone that you hire to walk through no after no after no after no. And because you're going to be really clear on like what you want and why you want it, that will be a big enough reason for you to push through that constant rejection. Sometimes it's not as bad as like what I'm making it out to be, but only a founder or only the entrepreneur that's behind it will really be able to like force their way through that. So I hope that answers the question. If you need follow-up for that, let me know, or like pop another question in. But Jason, do you have anything to add to that? Because I know you've got some experience in this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it there. I'm still a one-man show, so I'm doing what I can. But I'm thinking about getting more of the fulfillment side. That's going to be my first hire, is really just to look into that regard, because that is easily documented and I can hand that off to somebody. Whereas the biz dev stuff, sales, marketing, all of that kind of stuff, like you said, getting the no's, I need to hear what their no's, the reasons behind those no's are, so that I can then adjust and pivot and things like that. So me as the owner of the business, for me, I would lean towards that. And I haven't hired anybody just yet, but that's where my head is going at this point in time, sooner rather than later.
Cool.
Okay, cool. So this one I got as, let me just see if there's other ones, because I had put in here a couple of them from email that people responded back to me, but they got upvoted. But so maybe we'll just kind of go through them here. I was going to take all the live ones, but these couple got upvoted. So How do you test pricing? And is it always best to have 3 tiers?
Great question. Great question. On tiers, the tier one for me is easy. I think if you have one tier, like if it's a yes no answer on any type of productized service, then it's a binary decision. And so it's hard for people to see, like they'll either be like, yes, this is something that's interesting to me, or no, it's not. If you've got tiers, there's more landing places for a client or a customer to find themselves, and what you can do is tailor the description of those tiers to where they're at as the stage in their business or their needs or what they're trying to accomplish. I've worked with, there's a productized service, videohusky.com, and Justin has done very, very well, and he's scaled that business very, very nicely. He's been able to do it with one tier, and his price point, I think, is $4.95 a month, and he does unlimited video editing. What he'll look to do in the future is to bring in different options for folks that have greater needs, or like they need to do more volume, or they might need a little bit less, or something like that. He's an exception to my rule of the 3 tiers, and I've kind of nudged him on it for a couple of months now. So I like, my personal preference is it gives people a place to land, and also if you have a price point that's a little bit high and people are starting to have a hard time with seeing value or complaining about cost, then you can downsell to another tier, or proactively set up some sequences and things that check usage or check that people are active, and then reach out and say, look, looks like you're not getting what you need from this, but we do have this like off the menu plan, or we do have this lower tier that you can jump into. And so you're saving the relationship and also retaining the revenue. So my preference is 3 tiers for sure. Anything more gets a bit confusing. Anything less, I don't know. People I think we think in 3s. As far as price testing, I'm more focused on kind of value-based pricing than time and materials. And with a productized service, if you're looking to create a subscription model and you're looking to do something that's like an unlimited service or something like that, there's pricing methodology and strategy that you can look at around like the economics of buffets. So if you go to like the casino and you hang out at the buffet, you can see how those can be profitable businesses. I think probably one of the hacks there is like everyone chows down on bread and dessert. And like, even though there's like salmon and maybe some steak there, folks like don't really like the utilization of what's available helps it to be maintained as a profitable offering. And so just some data points on this with WP Curve. Before we were acquired, the thing that I was looking at was what was the volume of tasks per customer who are on an unlimited plan. And so our price points were $79 a month, $99 a month, and $199 a month. Across the board, on average, people would request 2.8 tasks a month. So call it 3 per customer. Now, it's funny because there's no difference between the price tiers, right? So you would expect that someone that's paying nearly triple would be getting more utilization out of the service. But what they were actually paying for was a response time rather than the volume of submissions or the volume of tickets they were getting done. And so I surfaced this and this idea of like figuring out what the anchor is for value in your pricing or in your product offering, because for us, we had in the early days thought it was going to be volume. Like, we'll charge by volume because a bigger site's going to need more work. But that wasn't necessarily true. What a bigger site actually wanted was a faster response time, and that meant that we just had to organize things in the background to make sure that we delivered value in line with what the customer expected. Was I think for the top tier plan was maybe a 6 or an 8 hour turnaround, and the lower tier was like 24-hour turnaround. So if you can figure out what the value anchor is, then you don't have to get so caught up on time and materials and what other people are doing in market, and that requires really like talking to your customers and understanding what's more important. One other data point or one other suggestion that I'll offer to that is, if you have active customers or if you have an active productized service and you want to figure out how to get there, as far as like what do people care about, there's a survey tool which is called Diff. That's MAXDIFF. And this is a survey that people can use to trade off product features against one another to see which one's most valuable. So that's a really handy way to look at, okay, I think because I'm like so close to this thing that a customer cares about X, and maybe they actually care about Y, I'll go and ask my customers and be informed by what they care about to define my pricing strategy. So a couple of suggestions and ideas there for things that can be tested out. But I'm always looking for how can you maximize the profitability of a productized service, because you've got a significant fixed cost base if you're like hiring people to fulfill, and so you can still get SaaS-ish margins if you can figure out what those leverage points are in your business. Jason, did I answer the question? I hope I did.
Yeah.
I just start riffing. I just start like talking. And
No. I think it's funny that you were mentioning about the higher tier people. And so with Nurture Kit, I align myself with the pricing structure is essentially by subscriber, because it's easy enough by the number of subscribers on the list, rather. So because it's easy enough for that person to come in there and say, oh, okay, this is what I need, because I know this number, right? But what I'm finding now is that, much like you said, the folks on the higher tier, they don't mind paying the higher price as long as they're getting more value out of it. They want things faster, they want things more complex, and they actually want more of the data analysis for me rather than just the putting the automations in place. So now I'm starting to rethink a little bit about what that service could look like, so that it could be almost an upsell, the data analysis side of things. So so that's kind of where I'm sitting now. So I when I first, when we were going through it, for me, I was just like, hey, I'm just going to throw these numbers at the wall and see if they stick, right? And now, like, I have this starter package that is what it is, but what I'm actually going to do is turn that into a course, because it's an easy enough recipe that I can do for people that are at that stage. They don't even have enough traffic going through their email list for the automation to see a good ROI, if you will. So
sure.
I'm just basically making it as a digital download, for lack of a better term, that they can say, hey, I work through this. Here's the recipes. Here's the templates. Here's the swipe. Here's everything that I would normally do. You can run with it yourself. And it's a smaller price point, and it actually gets people into my ecosystem.
I like that. And there's something that's interesting in that, which is you create a barrier to someone getting the outcome that they want. So if someone's teetering on the edge of that and you're like, here's a self-serve option, and they're like, oh man, now I got to watch like a 6-hour and 8-hour course and do all this work, I just don't have the time. I'll actually just like progress myself into the middle tier. So that's great, because you're introducing a little bit of friction and putting the onus back on the customer to make a conscious decision about what their needs are. So I like that. That's cool. That's a good one.
All right. Cool. So this one is also from email, but it was upvoted. For both of you, presumably you both have had coaches. Well, obviously I have. When looking for a coach, what's the one thing that you found to be helpful to look for within that coach or program?
Can I jump on this? I love this
Absolutely.
question. Oh my goodness. There's always an exception to my answer, and I'll give you the exception first. So if you look at coaches in the NBA, like not every single coach in the NBA has won an NBA championship. There was, I think, back in the Cleveland Cavaliers days when LeBron was doing great things back there, his coach, he didn't look like a basketball player to me. So my exception to this rule is sometimes this doesn't work. 95, 99% of the time, what I'm looking for personally in a coach is someone who's walked the path that I'm looking for direction down. So it's not that difficult to call yourself a coach, because you can go and do some kind of coaching certification, and you can understand a framework, and you can recite that framework or put someone into that framework, and that will be your coaching offer. There's nothing wrong with that. That can help a lot of people. If you actually want to work with someone who has gone to where you want to go and has firsthand experience, I personally look for that. So when I work with a money coach, the guy that I work with, he sold a hedge fund at the age of 35. And so he's been able to, like, he's been very financially successful, but has also switched his life up to be very focused on how he can contribute back to people around him. I have a person that I work with on a spiritual level, and she is almost a 70-year-old woman, and she's been doing what she does for 30 years. So these people I'm looking towards who have actual real world experience in what they're professing. And sometimes, they'll be a little bit jaded or a little bit grumpy, or you get a little bit of attitude from them, but that comes with wisdom. Like, that comes with the time spent and the, doing the hard yards and banging their heads against brick walls and those kind of things. So hands down, for me personally, if I'm going to engage with someone, they need to have accomplished what I'm looking to accomplish and have very close experience to it. Because it's one thing to hypothesize, like, this is what I would suggest based on the data that you're giving me. It's another thing to say, here is an actual scenario that played out, or some risks or some things that I see coming up ahead for you because I've walked that path. So it's a very obvious distinction. But yeah, thanks for letting me jump in on that one, Jason. I love that question.
Yeah, it's similarly. I have the same answer essentially, right? Like, I want to know that they have. I look for somebody who's a bit further down the road than I am and has, like you said, walked that path. But I also look for that person to be successful in the area that I want to be successful in. So could be successful in business and all that, but if I'm really focused in on productizing my service, like this example, you did that very successfully. And so that's why when I reached out to you, we had conversations on socials before and calls and things. I knew if it's anything about productizing services, I'm going to ask you about it, right? If it's somebody else where I got a coach early on, and he was a developer, and he was very successful in building a business of his own just as a single person. So that's what I wanted, right? And so I went towards him and I leaned on him. And so I just look at the problem that I have, where I want to get to, and then I seek out that person to see if there is somebody that could help me in that realm. And if they do coaching or mentoring and stuff like that, even better. Otherwise, I just try to reverse engineer everything that they're doing.
One thing I'll add to your point there, Jason, is like a lot of the people who are extremely successful in what they do, and I've done this before, I've gone to them and asked them for coaching or advice. And often they're like really, really busy, and it's super hard to get their time. And so then you've got to figure out ways to get access to them. So that's another kind of scenario to throw in the mix, which is like, are the people like digging gold or selling shovels? I'm sure everyone's heard that term. And if you're excellent at what you do, it's very likely that you're going to be in there doing what you do rather than telling people about how to do what you do. And again, I call myself out as an exception here. I went into coaching because someone asked me for advice, and I really enjoyed having the conversation. And then I had someone else ask me for advice, and I'm like, shit, I guess I better put like a price tag on this, otherwise I'm just going to be on phone calls all day. So yeah, that's my path.
Yeah, that's exactly how I kind of fell into it too. I didn't know I was going to do anything like this, like helping developers and designers do this, where it was like hallway chats that I had with people and people pinging me on, various Slack channels that I was in on and socials and stuff. And I was like, okay, like maybe I should put a price tag on this because,
Yeah.
I'm eating up the time away from the other part that is bringing in the money. So, yeah, I'm with you on there. Cool. So hopefully that was helpful to those two people who wrote those in. I should have probably just copied their names in here, but it didn't. So, um, next question. There's two questions here. For the beginner entrepreneur, is it better to be good in a big market or to focus in a small market? So this is, I could totally go on this for days. And number two, top three mistakes for beginning entrepreneurs. Thank you.
You can lead that one, man. I think you got some hot stuff coming through.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to be a big big fish in a small pond first. Like you can talk the language of the person that you are helping and serving. That's first and foremost. I mean, I don't think that it's too small to go as specific as you possibly can. Like it hurts to do that because you feel like you're leaving money on the table, but it's when you learn and be hyper focused in becoming that expert, right? Where, look, I specialized in a plugin of a plugin on top of a framework on top of PHP, right? So, I mean, I was a specialist in the Prosperous plugin subscriptions, which was based off of WooCommerce, which was a plugin for WordPress, right? And
You
so
know,
for
I helped Brent sell that
yeah,
company, right? Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
funny.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I've known Brent for years, right? Like we met in San Francisco a couple times, and so for
yeah.
me it was like I I became known as the WooCommerce subscriptions guy, and like they passed me along work. I got inquiries just off the street, quote unquote, because they're like, "Hey, I hear that you're the person to talk to," and so just having that focus allows that referable moment, right? So like if somebody hears that you're good at something, they're just going to go straight to you. And so I think totally it's better to focus in on a small market and then just expand out from there. I mean, now I'm more into email marketing and behavior marketing and stuff, but yeah, I still have a good percentage. It was like 20-25% of my clients use subscriptions still. So yeah, that for me, the top three mistakes for beginning entrepreneurs. One, I think it's to take on everything and everything that you can get. I just think that that's a mistake that I did early on. And the other two things is really just I know like I look back on myself, so I can only speak from my own experiences, is partnering up with the wrong partner, right? Because if the alignment wasn't there, um, for me, and I wrote a whole blog post about this, so you could go check that out. But yeah, partnering up with the wrong partner um, can also, so like if you are a designer and you partner up with a developer and you say, I'm going to be a virtual agency now together, you got to really make sure that you're both on the same page with what you guys' goals are. Because early on for me, I wasn't into sales, so I partnered up with somebody that was, and he was a hardware guy, but he liked the sales part. Just didn't. He had different goals than I did, and so it ended. So that was the other mistake that I did, and then it's really just not being clear on who you want to serve, like personality wise, your ideal client, right? I think there's a lot of confusion between like niching down and specialization versus ideal client. And I lean towards your ideal client being the actual individual or individuals that you're working with, really understanding their personality and characteristics, the traits that you enjoy working with somebody on a project. Um, that is so important, especially in today's age. If you're working virtually with folks, you really need to have that kind of like rapport with somebody. If somebody just steps on your toes or doesn't respect you, or but whatever the case may be, then that project is just never going to be as successful as it could be. So that would I hope that helped. I think you need, forgive me if I mispronounce this wrong, but Helena, we'll give it a shot. Hopefully, Helena, that was helpful for you. Alex?
Oh man, I love this question as well. I love all of the questions. I guess that's why I do coaching. And a big like a shout out to Brent. So Brent is the founder of Prosperous. He now works at Automatic. I worked with him in a coaching capacity for probably on and off for about 2 years, and it was like one of my like proudest moments as a coach to help him through the acquisition by Automatic. And I knew him from I think about 2013, back when they were a tiny team and getting things moving. But that's a testament to getting clear and specialized on what it is that you do and doing it very, very well. Like their software is phenomenal. What they build is just excellent. Same thing for WP Curve. The only thing we did was WordPress support. That's it. We had people throwing projects at us, plugin requests, these different things that they wanted to fit in because they knew that we were good at what we did. But ultimately, we just held fast with WordPress support. Now, the challenge here is knowing that your market is either big enough or going to be big enough to support the business and the goals that you want to accomplish. And so my rough estimation was, with the product that we had, was I've personally felt the pain of trying to fix a WordPress problem myself before. I'm like smart enough to figure out the problem if I like want to go and teach myself some stuff, and I can go and get it done. But I would probably rather just pay someone to solve that problem for me if it's like relatively cheap. And so my justification was, there's got to be at least 1,000 people out there who are just like me. And if that is true, then we have a viable and a solid business. And that was true. So I think there's some like mental hurdles to jump yourself through if you're worried about being specialized and understanding the market size. We get into that in the program. We talk about the size of the market. We talk about whether you're building on a platform or you're supporting a product. So I've got a bit of a framework for breaking those things down, which helps you to see what the opportunity size is. Getting into the top 3 mistakes, I'll share my own personal mistakes. One, I wasn't patient. So I tried to brute force my way through everything by sheer manhandling of whatever it is that came my way. And I'm talking like 14, 16-hour days in front of my laptop, endless phone calls, pushing on every single front. And that really, it just hammered my health. I gained a bunch of weight. I was drinking a lot of alcohol. I was pretty out of shape, and I was just like crouched over a laptop for a long amount of time. Sometimes it requires that, but the second, third, fourth time around, I've got a little bit more patience and a little bit more self-belief that if I set out to accomplish something, I'll figure out a way to do it without killing myself. Second point, echo Jason's, which is the idea of partnership. The business partner that I had with WP Curve, little known story about how that came to be, but Dan, who was my co-founder, he had a blog post and he was talking about the failure of his previous business. I jumped into the comments and I was talking with him back and forward, and that's how we actually got to meet each other. So I met my co-founder in the comments on his blog. We worked together and co-founded WP Curve, and we didn't meet each other for the first, I think, 18 months of the business. Or maybe it was 12. It was either 12 or 18 months, but we'd never met each other face to face. He was based in Australia. I was in San Francisco. And what was interesting about that is because we knew we wanted to do something significant, but we weren't really, really clear on what our goals were. And that created a lot of friction. And Dan is he's a very active entrepreneur and doing a bunch of different things and had like lots and lots of different ideas. And I'm more of a plotter. Like I'll just like find something that works and try and do more of that because I'm not super creative, but I'm very good with execution. And yeah, the alignment in goals between co-founders, I think, is very, very important if you are going to partner up. I advise people that it's as significant as a relationship as a marriage, because you're going to be spending 1/3 of your life with your business partner. There's money at stake. You're going to be holding each other through the highs and the lows. So that commitment needs to be there. And also the understanding that things change. And I always tell people, if they're going to have a business partner, to look at buy-sell agreements if something goes wrong and know what the exit strategy is before you actually partner up with someone. So those things, I think, like I had a great outcome because the company got sold, everyone made a bunch of money and got to retain all the employees, but I was very lucky. And so, if I had my time over again, I would have had those provisions in place. And then the third mistake, I think, was not thinking big enough. So I think we often underestimate what we're capable of, and we put ourselves in this narrow box and we're just like, I'm happy in here, I'm happy in there. But what will happen over time is you'll need more challenge, or you'll need something bigger, or you'll need something that's more thought-provoking, or whatever it is. And the thing that I noticed myself doing was like just being happy with what I was doing and not like kind of coasting at some level, like getting kind of complacent. And I think the idea of entrepreneurship is being able to like push yourself to the edge as much as you can and get to know yourself and grow. And so if I had my time over again, I probably would have had bigger aspirations about support and being able to support multiple platforms. Shopify, Wix, Weebly, Squarespace. It would have been the curve for all of the things. And I took a call from a venture capitalist and they asked me about that. And I was like, you know what? Like WordPress is like big enough, which at the time was 20 something percent of the market. And I think now it's like 34 or 33 or something percent. Big market, but there's always something a little bit bigger. And that expansion would have been a huge test. So yeah, those are my things, my mistakes. And that was me as a first timer. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think, and what you said too, what you encouraged in me in the program was something that I really never thought about before. And you were like, okay, so if you know your target is this, what if you just look to the right or left a little bit? And is it enterprise? Is it, a different vertical, right? Like that could also use your product and or service and maybe get larger, more revenue. It could be the exact same delivery, exact same service, but just because of who they are, it provides more value. And so I had never really thought about that before. And to your point, we don't think big enough sometimes, or we just don't even think farther from the tunnel vision that we're in, right? And so that for me is something that I'm actually exploring these days with some agencies rather than just course creators and things like that. So I have a couple of agencies on Nurture Kit now that I'm helping with their essentially their sales team, right? So they're driving traffic to their site, getting leads and passing it along to their sales team rather than pitching an online course or opening up an evergreen, deadline funnel type thing. So it's definitely, and this is more valuable to them because on a per month basis, they could have a $150,000 client come through their doors and their website. And I built the automation to help them do that. So the ROI is a lot of extra zeros on the end of that.
I love that. I look for that. And I see that a lot, man. I see a lot of people that are in a service mindset, which is to help like a client build something for them or create some infrastructure and kind of forget of like how significant the impact they can have on their business can be. And this is like you kind of match, you kind of pull out what it is you provide and you can throw it at a bunch of different markets or a bunch of different customers and say, okay, like there's a live chat example that I use. John, who founded HelpFlow, which is live chat for e-commerce sites. When he came to me, he was like, I want to do WP Curve for live chat and charge 99 to $200 a month. I'm like, that's great, but that's not going to work because of the dynamic of the model. So let's see what we can do to take your pricing up to $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month. Exact same underlying service, massive margin, and then the difference was the type of customer that was being served, and really healthy business, really solid business. So testament to your point there.
Awesome. So we're about just inside of 20 minutes to the top of the hour. So I think we've got 7 or so questions in here. If anybody has any questions, drop them into the ask a question box. We'll try to rapid fire through these if we can, I guess, so we could get to everybody's. Another Alex in here asks, what do you think an SEO and marketing agency's first full-time hire should be? I guess this kind of goes back to that other question, but currently it's just me and a team of subcontractors, freelancers delivering results. But obviously I want to spend more time working on the business versus in the business. Yeah, this definitely goes back to that other question.
This could be a trick question though, Jason, because my answer to that first hire would probably be a coach. Because that agency model for me, and I'm not like anti agency where I think they're a terrible idea, but because I have a bias towards productized services, and if you actually want to scale your model and have scale a bit, like be able to really ramp what you're delivering, the agency model has inherent like throttles, and so I could say, this could be your next hire, but it kind of kicks the can down the road because the underlying model is going to, you're going to shortchange yourself with that model. So there's a guy, Alan Silvestri, who went through, I don't know if he was in the same one as you, Jason. Okay. And he has a SEO company called mygrowthgorilla.com. His name's Alan Silvestri. He did a Productize service for SEO, which was in and around technical tasks for big blogs that want to have stay on the bleeding edge of all of these SEO things. Completely different way to deliver and fulfill the service, and a nice cross sell from his agency offering, and also a recurring product. So I'll drop a link to his landing page so you guys can look at it. But he was kind of asking himself the same question, and what I thought the appropriate answer was to actually just figure out something that was scalable versus worrying about who was the appropriate hire. But I'm biased. I'm a coach, so I'm going to give you that answer.
No, I think it's smart though, because Alex that asked the question. For me, I went and hired developers, and it just didn't work, right? Like, I'm a developer. I was fulfilling development work. And for me, it wound up being that I was just going to manage them as well as managing my clients at the same time. And that's not what I wanted to do. Like, part of what Alex brought to light, right front and center, but it was something that I kind of knew in the back of my mind anyway, was, what are you doing? What are you building your business for, right? Personally, like, what's the ultimate goal? Is it to scale to a point where you could step away from the business and just have the business run by itself? Do you want to get that corner office in Manhattan? Like, whatever the personal goal that you have for the business is so important to try to figure out. And for me, it was to be able to step away from the keyboard and spend some time traveling with my family and enjoying life, right? And so, that if I was to hire people and start managing people, that would just put my attention into something else in the business versus where I want it to go. So um, I'm with Alex, Coach Claff here, and saying that we, maybe apply to the program, Alex, and see if this is something that can help you. It definitely helped me. Okay, let's see. Gabriel asks, let's see. How do you get pricing correct from, I guess this is from, how do you get pricing correct from costs and with the team involved?
Yeah, I think that comes back to the time and materials and maybe the margin. And so I think it's in the 7th or the 8th module of the program, start to look at the financial plan around what the model is going to be for the offering. So that's something that we cover. Again, I'll reiterate this idea of value-based pricing versus cost of materials or time and materials. That's the inherent way to price. And when you do something like the WP curve model, it won't make sense up until a point, and then it will be an awesome way to charge. So it's more about getting a volume of customers in, being able to fulfill really quickly, understanding what the levers are, as I mentioned before, and what kind of volume you're doing. So again, value-based pricing over time and materials is going to save you a lot of headaches in the long run.
All right. So Igor says, and I'm going to skip over the other question, Igor, that you had, because we kind of answered that. But Igor's question was, what was your main challenge in the scale phase?
This is good. I love good questions. Let's see. So I'll give a couple of examples to this because there's some juicy ones. The first one was, I think it was about 2014-ish, and my co-founder went on Smart Passive Income. He went on Pat Flynn's podcast and was talking about WordPress support. And he offered to do site reviews in the comments. And then there were literally hundreds of people asking for site reviews. So we were in Hawaii. This is when we met, right? So we're in Hawaii. The Smart Passive Income podcast launches. We're watching Stripe. Actually, at this point, I was still drinking. So we're sitting at a bar and watching Stripe just tick in with all these orders. And we're like, we've made it. And then the reality hit that over time, as those orders continue to come in, we wouldn't be able to provide them a good experience because we had for starters, we had a really convoluted onboarding process where someone would sign up. We'd do like an 18-point site check that would go to one of our developers, would send it back to them, and it would create all of this like thrash. And so for scale, I think in the early days, it was very much about like getting better at lining up the process with what the customer actually wants versus what we thought was important. Because we were putting a step in front of what a customer cared about, but we were creating a massive bottleneck downstream. So put it to you this way, if you bought WordPress support, you had a problem, the ideal experience would be you purchase, you submit your ticket and it gets fulfilled and it happens really quickly. And then you're like, that's a great service. What we were doing were people were signing up and then we were proactively doing a huge site review, sending them back half a dozen different things that needed to be fixed. And then we would have to break those down into like single and small tasks to be able to feed them back to customers. So we were like our own worst enemy in that sense. That was in the early times. Then, as we continued to scale and grow and go into GoDaddy, the challenges there were very different. So GoDaddy at the time, I think, had a sales force of about 3,000 phone reps. And so because they have the biggest WordPress install base, at least at the time, we wanted to attach our products to WordPress hosts, like clients that had WordPress hosting. And the challenge there was figuring out, okay, how are we able to educate all of these frontline people to sell this product in a way that's not going to create a crappy experience? Because, if phone people aren't paying attention to what the product is and they're like, yeah, just throw these guys, talk to these guys, they'll fix your problem here, I'll sign you up. We would have massive downstream implications. So we had to be very, very clear on like what was being offered, how it was being offered. And there's a guy, Matthew Clancy, who I was working with at GoDaddy, who did a masterful job at being able to define the scope in terms that frontline staff could use. And finally, another scaling challenge was being able to resource the team appropriately, because as we really started to push volume and really started to sell a lot of product, we obviously need more people to do the work. But you can't have a productized service that scales in a linear way, because what you end up with is really, really top-heavy teams of hundreds of people. And you don't want that, because that's an administrative nightmare. So what we started playing with was different ways to automate particular tasks, different ways to just cut the cycle time out of things. And it was very much around process improvement and, making sure that stuff was getting through as quickly as humanly possible. And that, the staff had all the tools and the training and all the stuff they needed, and to create, to support a high volume of throughput. So yeah, what that business looked like at, kind of small potatoes in the WP Curve days through to dealing with like thousands and thousands of issues in the GoDaddy days. Very different scale, very different way to look at the business, but a lot of it came back to process. Like a lot of it came back to the quality of the process and how much kind of volume I could force into this machine and not have explode the machine. So that was always the challenge with that.
Great question, Igor. He's got another one here too. What were the main customer acquisition channels which were efficient for you? Obviously, smart passive income worked.
Smart passive income. That was great. If you can get on Pat's podcast, that'll help. It turned out they weren't great customers, but we got a bunch of sales because a lot of his audience is very much in the beginner phase. The thing that was great for us was content. And this is in the days where it wasn't too hard to stand out with content. And so what we would create was around small business and online business and rank pieces of content that were very broad and very useful. The most successful piece we ever did was on WordPress speed. That post was on on page one of the SERPs for that keyword, and that would bring us in 5,000 to 6,000 visitors a month. And so again, a mistake that we made that if I had my time over, I'd do it again. Kind of like what Saeed Balki's done with WP Beginner, just very specific issues that people are having with WordPress, answering how to fix them. We did it at GoDaddy. Every single task that we did, we open sourced all of the steps and the instructions for people to fix it themselves. And that was like, we already had enough inbound volume from just existing GoDaddy customers, so marketing wasn't a problem. But that, like, demonstrating that you can actually do what you say you're going to do, and often, you know, giving away the formula for free kind of works. The missed opportunities we had where we didn't really do Facebook ads, we didn't really do Google ads. We just like missed a bunch of channels because content was working, so we just continued to double down on that. But yeah, probably a little bit different today. And then the other sources that worked well were affiliates. So John Lee Dumas at Entrepreneur on Fire, Chris Ducker, a couple of these other guys. My co-founder Dan had a relationship with them. We provided them free or very cheap support. We had footer links on their websites, so people, if they were like browsing around, they'd see that they were supported by us. Again, they weren't the best customers, but it helped with volume. So the best customers for us were the folks that had no idea who Dan or I was personally, but just had a WordPress problem and found us, and we looked trustworthy, and they'd say, then they would buy from us, which was through content.
Yeah, answering questions, I think nowadays works best, like hyper-specific pieces of content, whether it's a blog post or a podcast or things like that. Like, you know, one of my podcasts is Ask Rez, and it's just me like riffing on a question for a few minutes. And that is quintessentially the top pieces of content, the pages in my Google Analytics all day, every day. And because people are searching questions now rather than, you know, I mean, generalization type stuff and huge epic blog posts at this point in time. I mean, they still work for content, but for me, in my experience lately, especially from hearing from my clients and what's working for them too, like really really in-depth hyper answers to questions. And as long as those questions answer what it is, then you're going to just stay on top of the SERPs.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We've got a few minutes left. Got a couple more questions. So if you're keen on continuing through, we'll just pound these three out and
let's do it.
All right. Awesome. So one question came from email, and it says, how do you know when it's the right time to productize the service?
I try not to answer this with a joke. And try not to like marginalize anyone. If you are getting sick of doing the same thing over and over again, like if you're in fulfillment and you're sick of writing proposals and you're sick of dealing with clients and you're sick of the headache that comes along with that, that's a great time to think about productizing. If you are interested in actually selling your business, so oftentimes consulting businesses, agency models, like they rarely, if often, will fetch any kind of multiple for the value of the business based on revenue. So if you have an intention to build a business that is a sellable entity or asset, that's a great reason to productize. If you want time freedom and you're sick of working 40 to 60 hours a week and just grinding out and not feeling like you're actually a business owner because you're doing all of the work, great time to productize. What are some other ones? If you just kind of feel like you're missing out on life generally because your business is running you, that's another time to at least consider it. And I say all of this because like everyone that's come into the program and everyone that I've worked with around productization, if I can make that a word, they've had some kind of symptom like that, where there's a big enough pain point, there's a big enough catalyst for them to look at where they're at today in their business and go, you know what? If I look out 12 to 18 months, I can't really see how what I'm doing today is going to be different or better than what I've been doing. And that's a bit of a harsh reality. But if you come to that point and you're like, okay, this kind of model is not going to kind of outlast me or outlive what I'm building, then that's a great time to look at it. And you're seeing with Jason what he's doing here with Nurture Kit is he's putting all the foundation in place to be able to know what he needs to deliver, price it appropriately, and then bring in the support behind him to make his dream come true of having more time with his family. And this is just sequencing. Like this, there's no magical formula to that. It's figure out what the customer wants, consistently deliver it, write the processes for it, and then start to train someone to come in, and then focus on marketing to scale to make up the difference in bringing someone in. And then you've effectively saved yourself, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 hours a week of time.
Mm-hmm.
So if that sounds interesting to you, if you are like hyped about the idea of having free time and being able to like look at hobbies and interests and spend more time with families, or do stamp collecting, or whatever it is that you're interested in, those are good prompts to look at productizing your service.
Yeah, and easily the 4 of the 5 things outside of even thinking of selling my business, like that was the only one reason that I didn't tick that box that you said. That's why for me, like, like I have a 3-year-old and he's going to be 1 in a month and a half. And like for me, it's like 1, I feel like I just can't do what I used to do when I was 25. Like I can't just pound all night. I can't just churn through the hours of the day anymore. And just using different parts of my brain to play with my kids and stuff like that is exhausting. And so like I'm just like at a certain point, I'm like, all right, I want to be able to spend my time and be present and all the rest of it. The last thing I want to do is have Slack pop up on my phone because I got an email from the help desk that a client has a problem and things of that nature. And so,
Oh, it's the worst. It's the
so for
worst
me,
feeling.
I'm like, and my son, even yesterday, he said, "Could you put your phone down?" I was like, "Ah, oh, see, that's the worst, right? Like he's 3,
That's when you need a productize,
right?"
right there.
So I'm like, yep, threw the phone on the couch, and like, so for me, it was realizing just where I was in my life and seeing that, okay, I want to be able to build a business that's not running me, and I want to be able to step away from the keyboard once in a while, still make money, still be able to have a roof over our heads, still take vacations and so on, but just have that freedom to know that the business is still running fine if I'm away from it for a little bit.
I'll just add a little bit of experience personally on that one, just to close that one out. When WP Curve got to a point where I had team members in place to manage the team and marketing and all that sort of stuff, I was in San Francisco and working with a lot of entrepreneurs, friends with a lot of entrepreneurs that were like going big, like as in like raising a bunch of money or trying to build really big businesses. And I got right into basketball. Like I was just loving playing basketball, and I was playing basketball at lunchtime 4 or 5 times a week. Like my knees probably didn't really enjoy it, but the point of that was like I was really passionate about that, and I had the time and the space to do that. And then I jumped back into doing some consulting stuff, and like I had the time freedom to go out and explore different things that I was interested in without feeling guilty that I wasn't like working hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's what I like to see with people that I work with who have they really want that, like they really want to get after that. Bridget's a great example. She went through one of the early iterations of the program. Her goal was to buy herself an Airstream caravan to be able to travel around the US. She recently purchased it. I talk about it in the Slack community, which is like where everyone kind of hangs out. But that specific thing that she wanted to do was big enough and clear enough that we could figure out how to create the business to support that goal, and then scale out the team and everything else. And I'll drop her URL in the chat here so people can look at the example. But that to me is like that's like living your life, right? Like what could be
Right.
better than that? Like who wants to be tethered
Exactly.
to a computer for the rest of the days?
Exactly. And that's what it is for me. Like I knew that I wanted the time, freedom, and flexibility to live my life and not ask for permission to take a day off when I'm an adult, right? Like from somebody else. And so that I knew in my teens. And this was before the internet. I had no idea what that even looked like, that sort of thing. But nowadays, like, just going to spend some time because it's a nice day outside. It's starting to become springtime here in New York at 50 degrees outside. It'd be nice to go outside and not have to worry about Slack notifications. That's why I'm super excited about Nurture Kit and where it's headed. It's busy, but nonetheless, it'll get to where it's going to get to. All right. Another one from email. I know that it's a little bit past 5 o'clock. We're just going to pound out these last 2 questions. So if you have to go, there will be a replay for a little bit of time. I'll leave it up. I'll shoot you guys an email, but definitely go ahead and check out the program. You can just click the link below. If it's interesting to you, if any of this resonated with you, certainly do so. This is the last time he's running it. So if it's the last time and he's saying that this is it, there's plenty of people that would vouch for this, myself included. It's a fantastic program. Definitely capitalize on it. Question from email was, how do you validate an idea as a viable product? That's a big question.
I can do that quickly. Validate an idea as a valuable a viable product. Write it down on a page. We have an exercise for this. This is something that we do. Take it out to people that are in that space and basically talk them through it, like at a very, very fundamental level. There's more detail that we can get into with that, and this is the the kind of rejection process that you get used to. But I think around week 4, we work into creating the offer, knowing what the offer is, and then getting out there and working it. A couple of steps before that is identifying, giving yourself the intellectual kind of agreement that there is an opportunity here based on the market size, based on the fact there's maybe similar products in market, or there's a wide open need that may not be being served or maybe served poorly. So we go through that with in steps and in sequence, and that's all in the program. And I also review all of this stuff myself. So you'll have a workbook, you go through it, I'll jump into comments, and Jason, you and I went back on this quite a few times. You'll have questions and things that you need some clarity on, or something stuck, and I'll be able to jump in and comment and give you feedback on that. So if I see something where I'm like, hey, that makes absolutely no sense to me, I will absolutely tell you. It doesn't mean that I know everything or that I'm going to be correct, but I'll call that out and offer some suggestions or alternatives. So yeah, that is in the program. That's something that we work through.
Yeah, and this specific question is, we went back and forth a few times on it, because you challenged me in saying, hey, you just boxing your product, your custom service as a product. And there were times where I was, and until I really got clear around that, and that was the challenging part. And that's, it's I look back on it now and I'm like, yeah, I was that was pretty obvious. But it was being so close to it, as Alex being the coach, he was like, dude, this is you're just kind of just putting it here instead of over here. So for me now, I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, but that was the great part of the program, is because I was struggling with that for a long time, and I always called my service as a productized service, while the actual thing was custom. Everything around it was the same. So the onboarding, the offboarding, everything, the experience of the customer was the same. And that's what was productized. But what I was still doing on a retainer basis, I just classified it as just ongoing monthly fees. It was a retainer. And so Nurture Kit has clear defined deliverables. It takes a specific amount of time to do that. Anything out of scope can be talked about as a one-off project, but this is the thing that you're buying from here. And so that back and forth, that exercise, that validating that idea is really, really hyper important.
I just love the clarity. That clarity is just the thing. That's the essence of the reason that you productize. If you are all things to all people and you don't really know what you do, and you're at a barbecue and someone says, what do you do? And you're like, I'm a digital marketing consultant. They're like, so do you do something with computers? Are you on the internet or something like that?
Right.
So the more specific and clear you can be about that in your offer, in your positioning, in your product, it saves everyone a bunch of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the final question is from Igor. I think we answered this, but if you have anything more to add to it, Alex, what was your main challenge in the beginning phase?
Whew. Casting my mind back to those early days. Boy, was I stressed out.
It's good for the next thing.
Yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this all over again. Am I crazy? Biggest challenge. You know what it was? It was the lag between the amount of effort I put in and the results that I saw. So I was grinding, absolutely grinding, and it was very hard to sometimes see like the fruits of my labor, and that it can be disheartening, right? But what happens with this effort and when you're focused on something to try and deliver it, like it compounds over time. So you'll work, you'll grind, and then 2 or 3 months later, some of the results will start to come in. I'll jump on mute because there's a guy on a saw here, but yeah, that seeing the results, the fruits of my labor, that was frustrating and hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to what you were saying before about patience, right? And like, for me, I'm the same way, and I think a lot of us entrepreneurs are very similar in that we want instant results, and we don't give things enough time. That's one of the things that I just constantly tell my wife to ping me on, right? Like if I start complaining or bitching about something that, hey, why isn't this working? She'd be like, well, when did you start it? Like I just told, and I told her, I said, look, if I start bitching about something taking forever, just ask me when did I start it. And so she's kind of like my venting. She hears everything that I talk about. And so we just have
Can
to
we
kind of
get can we get her to join the Slack group so when people hit that love or that bump and they're all like, oh, it's not like going as well as I want, she can just be like, when did you start it? And that will be
we can create a Zapier recipe for that. You just look for certain words. But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like you just kind of have to give a little bit of breathing time and space. For me, Nurture Kit is actually in a spot where it's uncomfortably fast right now for me, which is a good problem to have. It's just for me, there's a lot of stuff on my shoulders. Yeah, essentially overcommitted, but it is what it is, and so I'm working through that, and that's fine. But yeah, patience is a hard thing, and I think that that's for me is for me. I'm right now impatient to deliver the work. Like I tell people, like it's going to be at this date. So like as it starts creeping up with that date, because I'm actually writing out all my processes at the same time, it's taking a long time. But at the same time, I'm like, all right, just forget the writing of the process, deliver the work. And now that my processes are a little bit behind, right? So I eventually want to hand off that documentation to somebody. So it has to get written or recorded and things like that. But just got to give it enough time. Patience thing is a big thing. But yeah, I mean, we're 12 minutes over the hour. Alex, I appreciate you spending some time with us. This was awesome. The value in this, in and of itself, quality of questions were great. Answers, awesome. I really do appreciate you. I appreciate your time, especially going over. I know your time is valuable. Um, if anyone is interested, that's the pitch. The button's down below. Go ahead, click into that. I'm going to be sending an email out with the replay for this, as well as the link to the application to get into the program. Alex, I don't know when exactly you're going to close the application or when the program starts, but maybe you want to share a little bit
yeah.
on that.
Yeah, so it's actually like pretty quick. So I'm closing applications on this Friday. So
Okay.
we'll roll into the next program the following week. So the first call I think is going to be on the 11th of March. So if you are interested in joining, like you got a couple of days to think about it. I'm not going to be doing it again. It's not one of those false scarcity things where it's like, this is a limited time only. And then you see it in 3 months and you're like, that guy is like full of shit. That's not me. I'm finishing up coaching. I love doing what I'm doing, but I'm going to challenge myself with another business or another project. And I would love to have, like, anyone that's a friend of Jason's is a friend of mine. So if you are interested in coming along and joining the community, we've got like 40 other entrepreneurs that are either existing clients or previous clients who have been through the program. So it's not just, Jason and I chatting all day. There's a bunch of other folks with a bunch of other businesses that are in the community too. So yeah, welcome applications. If you have questions, I'll drop my email here in the chat, but it's alex@productize.co, or you can ask Jason because he's been through it. And yeah, we're here to help you scale.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm always looking to help anybody live in the feast, right? And the only way to do that is to be able to actually live, right? So I'm super, like the program, top notch. It got me over the hurdle. I'm proud to have a legit productized service at this point in time that's actually on the trajectory to where I wanted to get to, and I have Alex to thank for that. And so that's it, everyone. Again, I'll shoot an email with all the links, all the resources that we mentioned, the links to some Alan's group and Alex's site. You can check it out. Bridget's site. You can check it out. You can check out me. I'm at nurturekit.co. Alex's email. He dropped it in the Slack, the chat. And yeah, everyone else, I hope you have an awesome rest of your day or evening or morning, wherever you're coming from. And I apologize for the hiccups in the beginning. So I thank you for sticking around. And yeah, if there's anything you could do, just hit reply on any of the emails that I sent to you, and I'll be happy to answer them.
Right on. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thanks for